America. No documents needed. Our country and government have been talking about securing our borders our whole lives. In the last 55 years, we have had 10 U.S. presidents. 5 were Republicans and 5 were Democrats. Yet our borders are still unsecured. The president's number one job is Homeland Security and to protect America's sovereignty. Citizens, culture, flag, language, faith, patriotism, education, economy, American jobs, and one of the most important, the future of our children and theirs to come, is to preserve and protect the patriotism and sacrifices of generations of our fellow patriots who have fought and died to protect and provide our God-given rights and constitutional rights of freedom as one nation under God. Their patriotism and sacrifices must not be in vain. Every president had the strength and power to protect and secure the United States by securing our border from the north, south, east, west, from below and above, from space and from within, foreign and especially domestic. Remember, they placed their hand on God's Bible and swore an oath to we the people, to the United States, to our Constitution, and to our Republic. When any elected official in city, state, or federal government swears an oath, they have a faithful, patriotic, and moral duty to expose all threats against the United States of America. No matter how big or small, it's their honor and duty to bring those threats to we the people, and together we will stand, fight, and eliminate such threats. But when our elected officials take no action, that's the same as a guilty action. No action is a guilty action. Let's make a report card of our last 10 presidents, and we'll see what they all have in common. And yes, we can do all 10 presidents at one time. We'll start with their achievements, and with one of the most evil organizations in the world today, the United Nations. Many Americans don't even know that a multi-district United Nations Agenda 21 decree, passed in 1972, demanded that the United States must reorganize into 10 super-regions. Immediately, President Richard Nixon issued Executive Order No. 11647 on February 14, 1972, which fulfilled the UN order, as these 10 regions were created, and today await activation, in which all local government control will be rendered obsolete. George H.W. Bush, Bill Clinton, Barack Obama, the National Governors Association, and the United States Conference of Mayors have all signed Agenda 21. Agenda 21 is in every division of government and over 20% of our country. Achieved.
The NRA's position reminds me of negotiating with the Iranians or the communists. There's no possible discussion, and it's for political purposes.
Political purposes? No. It's about our constitutional rights.
The Supreme Court is wrong on the Second Amendment, and I am going to make that case every chance I get.
Number one, get a gun. Buy one legally, learn how to shoot it, and be primed to use it.
The United Nations Arms Treaty is a true threat to the whole world. On March 2013, a finished version of the Arms Trade Treaty, or ATT, was finally presented to the UN General Assembly, and that body approved the treaty by a vote of 154 to 3, with 23 abstentions, on 2nd of April 2013. The U.S. was one of the member nations voting in the General Assembly to approve the treaty. Only Iran, North Korea, and Syria voted against it. The treaty was finally signed by U.S. Secretary of State John Kerry in September of 2013. But the treaty still requires ratification by 50 UN signatories before it goes into effect, and it still requires approval by the U.S. Senate before the United States commits to its terms. Achieved. Project 60, North American Free Trade Agreement, or NAFTA, open borders, amnesty, socialized health care, stealing our money from Social Security, personal wealth, and the list keeps going, including the National Defense Authorization Act of 2013, which means You, as an American citizen, if you're classified as an American terrorist or suspicious of supporting terrorism, you can be arrested and detained indefinitely without charges, trial, and legal representation. That is a violation of all our constitutional rights. What classifies an American citizen as an American terrorist, according to our government? Any American who is a Christian, Jew, or patriot. So what are their failures? Defending a republic, one nation under God, securing America's borders, not loving, blessing, and protecting Israel, national debt, defending our Constitution, U.S. currency and Federal Reserve, taxation, Social Security reform, health care reform, the educational system, prayer in school, our Pledge of Allegiance, fulfilling your presidential oath, and this list never ends. Everything for our republic, our Constitution, and for we the people has been a failure, but everything for the globalist is an achievement. This is not a coincidence, but rather a well-designed plan, and it's been going on for over 100 years.
The United Nations is not a friend of democracy. It's not a friend to freedom. And don't forget the Supreme Court of the United States. Don't forget that when you go to vote on November 8th. And don't forget your Second Amendment. And don't forget the repeal and replacement of Obamacare. And don't forget building up our depleted military. And don't forget taking care of our vets. Don't forget our vets. They have been forgotten.
Are we starting to understand why Donald Trump is a massive threat to our government? But there's so much more. It's important to understand the world's political spectrum. Most Americans believe we're a democracy, not a republic. The difference between a democracy and a republic is the same difference between slavery and freedom. So let's analyze the basic forms of government, and we'll see where our elected officials stand. And this is the very short version. From left to right, there's monarchy or dictatorship, ruled by one, oligarchy, ruled by a few or a group, democracy, ruled by the majority, republic, ruled by law, and anarchy, which is ruled by no one. Looking first at monarchy or dictatorship, ruled by one. This form of government has a king, queen, emperor, or dictator. But this is misleading because a king or queen has their council of nobles or earls, and dictators or emperors have their bureaucrats or commissars. In the practical sense, the monarchy form of government really doesn't exist in the world today. It's ruled by a group, and so we will move monarchy over to oligarchy. Oligarchy, ruled by a few or a group, is the most common form of government in the world today, and in all of history, under such titles as kings, queens, dictators, fascism, Marxism, socialism, Nazism, communism, and any form of total government. Most of the nations today are ruled by a powerful few, who will put one of their own as the visible leader, but he or she is controlled and owned by the group. The top 5 oligarchy governments today are number 5, India, number 4, Britain, number 3 is Russia, number 2 is China, and number 1, the United States. To make matters worse, in 2010, the Supreme Court gave corporations and elitists free rein as they're now allowed to put as much of their money into federal campaigns as they wish. This leaves the United States to be controlled by a small group of wealthy citizens, while the average citizen's voice remains unheard. Democracy is ruled by the majority. Democracy comes from 2 Greek words, demos, meaning people, and kratia, meaning power. Therefore, democracy means the people hold power, or the rule of the people. Majority rules. We can illustrate the difference between a democracy and a republic in the setting of the Old West. A town's bank is robbed, and the town forms a posse of 20 men. They come across a cowboy they believe is the robber, but he has no bank currency on him, and they don't believe his story of where he's been. They vote 20-1 to hang him, and now a presumed bank robber is dead. That's a democracy. Majority rules. Take the same setting in a republic. They vote 20-1 to hang the presumed bank robber and throw the rope over the tree. But the sheriff shows up and says, you can't hang him, he has rights. He has the right to legal representation and to face a jury of his peers and a fair trial. Even the jury of 12 must vote unanimously that he's guilty in order to be hung. That's the law, a true republic, the law of the land.
I will never forget the day I first read this paragraph and felt like it was so descriptive of where we are today as a nation. Democracy is always temporary in nature. It simply cannot exist as a permanent form of government. A democracy will continue to exist up until the time that voters discover they can vote themselves generous gifts from the public treasury. From that moment on, the majority always votes for the candidates who promise the most benefits from the public treasury, with the result that every democracy will finally collapse due to loose fiscal policy, which is always followed by a dictatorship. And then he said, the average age of the world's greatest civilizations from the beginning of history has been 200 years. During those 200 years, these nations always progressed through the following sequence: from bondage to spiritual faith, from spiritual faith to great courage, from great courage to liberty, and from liberty to abundance, and from abundance to complacency, and from complacency to apathy, and from apathy to dependency, and from dependency back to bondage. It is not a stretch to describe the United States as a nation that has become apathetic. With all the blessing we have in this country, everything that God has done for us in this nation, how easy it is for us to take it for granted and just to fall into a sense of entitlement that we deserve this, that we should have this, when in reality, what we have is the result of sacrifice on the part of many people who paid dearly for the American way of life.
We have all of history that tells us any country that is a democracy will soon become an oligarchy government, and it's next to impossible to ever return to a republic. Goodbye, freedom. Anarchy is ruled by no one. The left calls conservatives the extreme right-winger, and that conservatives are known for extreme nationalism and opposition to immigration. That's like Nazism or neo-Nazism, fascism, neo-fascism, and other ideologies that feature extreme nationalistic views. But as you can see, the extreme right is anarchy, a society without a government or law. In an anarchist society, one has to protect their own possessions at all times and never leave your property. If you do, your possessions will be taken. There is no law enforcement or a republic to protect your rights and enforce the law of the land. Even the ancient Greeks stated that without law, there can be no freedom. Our founding fathers agreed and decided that some amount of government is a necessary force in any civilized, orderly society. From God Almighty, through our founding fathers, we were blessed with a true republic. Republic means the law of the land. Our constitutional conservative republic is a sovereign nation, as one nation under God, and was built upon a firm foundation of constitutional rights and the law of the land, with government having limited powers.
First of all, the blessing of our forefathers. Herbert Hoover, who was the 31st president of the United States, said, "Our forefathers built for the United States a government new and different from all the governments of the old world by 3 strokes of genius. First, they enacted a written constitution. They made, secondly, a division of powers within the federal and state governments by separating the legislative, judiciary, and executive branches. And third, they reinforced all of this by declaring to establish a government of laws where every citizen was equal before the law."
Our republic is one of a kind, and we're the envy of the world, and that's because of freedom and rights. Our true republic is the only form of government in all of history that defends, protects, and provides freedom according to our constitutional rights and the law of the land. We're a very blessed nation, and we are one of a kind. So, where does our government stand today? That's a great question, and it's not what you think. Both political parties want us to believe that we have a choice between Democrats, who stand for a democracy, the rule of the people, and Republicans, who stand for our republic, the law of the land. But this is no longer true and hasn't been in our lifetime. Over the last 4 decades or more, the Democrats have moved further left into an oligarchy, and Republicans have moved left into a democracy. We would be very hard-pressed to name an elected official of our time, past or present, who is truly a constitutional conservative Republican. Members of this oligarchy are the Progressive Party, which means the Communist Party.
I'm a progressive, but I'm a progressive who likes to get things done.
The Clintons, Obama, Kerry, Reid, Pelosi, Sanders, and the whole Democratic Party, along with the Federal Reserve, central banks, Wall Street, Muslim Brotherhood, the United Nations, CBS, NBC, ABC, CNN, and of course, George Soros, and much more. Who are the controlling groups of this oligarchy? Well, 120 of the richest people in the world. Rothschild, Rockefeller, the Bilderberg Group, Council on Foreign Relations, Trilateral Commission, Skull and Bones, and many more. They are the true owners of this oligarchy government. The Republican Party of today is now standing on the left in a democracy. And this might surprise you, but they have the very same owners. Yes, we have a one-ownership government. If this is hard to accept, then ask yourselves, how did Obamacare get passed? The NDAA, NAFTA, Iran deal, UN Arms Treaty, Agenda 21, open borders, amnesty, pro-Muslim, destruction of our military, abandonment of our veterans, the violations of all our constitutional rights, fast-track agreement, 100 million illegal aliens with anchor babies from 75 different nations, the majority of our products being imported from a communist country, China, 94 million Americans not in the workforce, and this list never ends. Listen to this former president, and it'll help us to understand why the Bushes, Clintons, Obamas, the United Nations, and even Saudi Arabia are fearful of Donald Trump winning the election.
We have before us the opportunity to forge for ourselves and for future generations a new world order, a world where the rule of law, not the law of the jungle, governs the conduct of nations. When we are successful, and we will be, we have a real chance at this new world order, an order in which a credible United Nations can use its peacekeeping role to fulfill the promise and vision of the UN's founders.
When Donald Trump wins and the books are opened, they all know they'll be held accountable for the crimes against our country, and yes, even for 9/11/2001. But we're not defeated yet. There is hope. Our faith. To have true repentance of what we all have become, and to put God back in His rightful place as one nation under God. To become united as one and stand with our presidential candidate Donald Trump. And being united as one, our Republican leaders will start to come back to our republic, and together we will make America greater than ever before. For the first time in our lifetime, we have a clear choice between good and pure evil.
Let's secure our border. We will build a great wall along the southern border, and Mexico will pay for the wall. We will enforce all of our immigration laws.
Donald Trump's beliefs and the actions he will take to make America great again can only be done by a person who truly stands for our constitutional conservative republic. Now we should all understand why Donald Trump is a massive threat to the establishment. He's going to destroy everything that they've accomplished in the destruction of America. This is the first time in our life we have a candidate who is truly of, by, and for we the people, our true republic as one nation under God. We should all say, Hallelujah.
secure our borders with technology, personnel, physical barriers if necessary.
We have the most secure border we've ever had.
So what is the true number of illegals in our country? The truth is that we really don't know. And naturally, there are no accurate records. So let's do some simple math based on what we do know. Senator John McCain stated in February of 2014 that according to U.S. Border Patrol apprehension statistics, almost 4 million illegal aliens entered the U.S. illegally in 2002. However, on June 17, 2004, Arizona's Representative Jim Colby testified to Senator McCain in a congressional hearing stating that the U.S. Border Patrol figures about 1 out of 4 or 5 are apprehended. But in a telephone conversation in 2004, U.S. Border Patrol Chief Michael Nicely, Tucson Sector, said it was more like 1 out of 7. Around 2008, the United States government and the U.S. Border Patrol announced publicly we arrest only 1 out of 10 illegals. And this has been going on for the last 8 years, since 2000. For every 1 illegal we arrest, 9 make it into the United States. The only way to find the most accurate number of illegal aliens in our country is to use the U.S. Border Patrol's apprehension chart with 3 conservative statistics of 1 out of 3, 1 out of 4, and 1 out of 7. These numbers do not include people who came here with visas, student visas, or work permits and never went home. Also, there is a small percentage of repeat offenders and illegals that have gone home. As we look at this chart, it will help us to understand how many illegals have entered our country. In 1986, Ronald Reagan granted amnesty to 3 million illegals. Many believe it was more like 8 to 10 million. But looking at this chart, it tells the story of lies and deception at the greatest level from our very own government. From 1970 to 1986, the U.S. Border Patrol arrested over 13 million illegals. Then multiply this number by the apprehension statistic of 1 out of 3 or even 1 out of 4, and this number is completely astonishing. 27 to 40 million illegals in our country at the time of amnesty, and there's no way that just 3 million illegals received amnesty. From 1987 to 1999, the U.S. Border Patrol arrested over 16 million illegals. Multiply this number by the apprehension statistic of 1 out of 3 equals 32 million illegals, or the apprehension statistic of 1 out of 4. That equals over 48 million illegals crossed our borders. From 2000 to 2015, the U.S. Border Patrol arrested over 12 million illegals. Multiply this number by the apprehension statistics of 1 out of 4 equals over 38 million illegals, or 1 out of 7 equals 77 million illegals have crossed our borders. These numbers don't include the hundreds of thousands of illegals our government bust, truck, and flew all over the nation under the false pretense of humanitarian crisis. But wait, there's more. On March 8, 2016, Sheriff Paul Bebeau of Pinal County, Arizona, and Brandon Judd, president of the National Border Patrol Council, held a press release stating that Barack Obama and Gil Kurlikowski have engaged in a campaign to mislead the American people to believe our border is secured. They're not assigning Border Patrol agents to high-traffic areas. Instead, they're assigned to low-traffic areas and are told to stay there. And if they don't like it, they can quit, leaving high-traffic areas completely opened. They have also manipulated the data. From 2000 to 2015, instead of arresting 1.6 million illegals per year, they've only been arresting about 330,000 per year. Which means, in the last 16 years, instead of arresting 25,600,000 illegal aliens, they've only arrested 5,280,000 illegals, allowing an additional 20 million illegal aliens to enter our country. The total from 1987 to 2015 is 70 to 120 million illegals crossing our borders in the last 28 years. And this number does not include the amnesty of 1986. You can go to any public school in the United States where you'll see who is responsible for the new baby boom. It's not Americans. According to the U.S. Department of Education, we have built 36,112 new schools from 1980 to 2012. America's birth rate since the baby boomers of 1946 to 64 has been 2.1 children per family. That means the 10th family would have 3 children. Experts claim, in theory, the school your parents attended would be the same school you would attend. So why so many new schools? The number one reason is anchor babies, children of illegal aliens. In the last 28 years, we've had 70 to 120 million illegals entering our country. Let's take the conservative number of 70 million illegals and do the math of the very least possible number of anchor babies. Example, 70 million illegals, in which 35 million are men and 35 million are women, and they marry each other, making 35 million married couples, and they only had 1 child per family. That would be 35 million anchor babies in the last 28 years. We all know that this is mathematically impossible, especially when the Mexican birth rate is 2.7 children per family, and many of them have become adults, married, and have had 2.7 children of their own. Our math, the numbers of 30 million anchor babies, is the very least possible scenario. Don't be surprised if this number is more like 60 million anchor babies living in the United States and being present or former students in our school system. Every single illegal alien has committed crimes by entering our country illegally, along with identity theft, fraudulent Social Security numbers, green cards, driver's licenses, and tax evasion. But there are millions of crimes committed each year, from murder, kidnapping, assaults, robberies, rape, molestation, sex trade, and the greatest evil of all is the impact of those crimes committed on our fellow Americans. Just about every city in the United States is and has been a sanctuary city. Our elected officials in city, state, and federal government support amnesty and immigration reform. They're not enforcing the law of the land. Reported by Breitbart News, over 94 million Americans not in the workforce. The number one reason? Illegal aliens. Illegal aliens no longer just work in the citrus and farming industries or digging ditches and mowing our lawn. In the last 25-plus years, they're working in waste management, manufacturing, food service, meat and slaughtering houses, hardware manufacturing, janitorial, assembly lines, auto industry, every single construction trade, and even union members. There are also reports of illegals being teachers and holding public office. It's time for our voices to become actions and defend the 94 million Americans who are out of the workforce, and this includes the H-1B visa. There are thousands of corporations and companies who lobby, support, endorse, and use H-1B visa. It's never been about hiring foreign workers with specialty trades that Americans are unable to perform. It's about cheaper labor and greater profits. Recently, Disneyland fired over 250 tech workers, and this is what they were told. The dead silence was broken when the Disney executive made a harsh announcement. All of you in this room will be losing your jobs in the next 90 days. Your last day of employment for this company will be January 30th, 2015. Your jobs have been given to a foreign workforce. In the meantime, you will be training your replacements until your jobs are 100% transferred over to them. And if you don't cooperate, you will not receive any severance pay. Shame on us for allowing this to happen. It's time to boycott all participating corporations, and especially boycott Disney. Mexico's drug cartel is a $150 billion a year business. They're established in over 300 U.S. cities with over 400,000 illegal gang members operating in over 37 states. They're smuggling millions of pounds of drugs, cocaine, meth, heroin, marijuana, and massive amounts of weapons and ammunition. How could any government allow such havoc and destruction of their citizens through drug addiction? Because it's part of their plan to have over 100 million people being drug users, abusers, and addicts. They're not paying attention to what the government is doing. They're waiting on their next government check or planning on their next crime for their next high.
Islam is not our adversary.
Muslims are peaceful and tolerant people and have nothing whatsoever to do with terrorism.
15 years after 9/11, the terrorist threat is not only still among us, but it's greater now than ever before. We have millions of illegal aliens from Middle Eastern terrorist countries: Afghanistan, Egypt, Iran, Iraq, Jordan, Kuwait, Lebanon, Libya, Palestinians, Pakistan, United Arab Emirates, Saudi Arabia, Sudan, and Yemen, who have brought with them Al-Qaeda, ISIS, and Hezbollah. They are called OTM, other than Mexicans. Middle Eastern terrorists will migrate to Europe, then to South America, to the tri-border region, where they learn to speak Spanish. Then they travel to Mexico and blend in with Mexicans, along with over 75 different nationalities, who are illegally entering into the United States. In 1970, there were 100,000 Muslims in America, and today we have over 9 million, with over 2,150 mosques throughout the USA, with 80% of them being built with funds from Saudi Arabia. Every mosque is a military outpost that serves as safe havens with funding, training, weapon storage, and breeding grounds for new recruitments while they plan their next terrorist attacks. About 72% of Muslims are illegal and are on federal welfare with a birth rate of 6.2 to 8.1 children per family. There are over 22 confirmed terrorist jihad camps in the United States, belonging to a Pakistan Muslim Brotherhood and Al-Qaeda-related branch. There are now tens of thousands of sleeper cells and hundreds of Muslim terrorist training facilities throughout the United States. The Muslim Brotherhood and other Islamists have infiltrated and have been appointed to all levels of government and are sitting in key strategic positions in the federal government, intelligence agencies, and national security agencies, and even in our own judiciary system. Consequently, they've had a major impact on our foreign and domestic policies, as well as the way our military is restricted on fighting our wars. The greatest threat to America is this House and this House. The United States does not have Arabic allies in the Middle East. What we truly have is a U.S. government with Arabic partners in the destruction and Islamization of America. The numbers have shown us that we have over 100 million illegals with children in the United States today, and that would account for 25% of our nation's population. Our population of 309 million American citizens, in which 49% are on some kind of government aid that includes over 109 million on federal welfare. For every one American working, we're now paying for one American not to work. Add in the total of illegals with children, and we're now paying for two people not to work. It is inconceivable that official estimates from city, state, and federal governments are so far off the current statistics. There's only one answer. They are deliberately misleading the American public. Truthfully, it's been a conspiracy and an act of treason against the United States of America. So, what is the cost to taxpayers for welfare and school education for illegal aliens per year? Here are our guidelines and the simple grand total. School education is $12,300 per student per year. Cost of welfare? Senator Jeff Sessions stated publicly that it costs taxpayers $60,000 per year for a family of four. That's $15,000 per person per year. 100 million illegal aliens, in which over 70% are on federal welfare. That 70 million multiplied by 15,000 per person per year equals $1,050 billion per year. A conservative number of 30 million anchor babies multiplied by 12,300 per student per year equals $369 billion per year. The total cost of illegal aliens on welfare and school education per year is $1,419 billion. After seeing these kinds of numbers, the words immigration or migration seem very weak. The word invasion seems more appropriate. This November 8th will be the most important election in the history of our republic. If you vote for Hillary Clinton, you'll be voting for the destruction of our country. She will finish the work of her predecessors, and we the people can say goodbye to liberty, freedom, and all of our rights. 30 years in politics, and she's done nothing for our republic, our Constitution, our flag, our military, for women or children. Everything she's done has been for her own personal wealth. We must call on our law enforcement and our military to be present at all places of voting to ensure a fair and just election, with only American citizens being able to vote. The only way Hillary can win is by corruption, cheating, and the votes of illegals. Our second choice is to vote for Donald Trump, who's a great businessman who's always been a true patriot. Everything he will accomplish in making America great once again will be for our true republic, our constitutional rights, and to enforce the law of the land, and once again, to be one nation under God. The United States of America has more threats today than all the previous 240 years added together. Our government will do everything they can to pass and enforce amnesty. Due to their large numbers and population, their vote will offset the votes of conservatives. This has always been their plan, to destroy our power in voting. We must become united as one, greater than ever before, and vote out of office our pro-amnesty, pro-Muslim oligarchy of a government, or the damage that has been done will be irreversible. If you love your country and are thankful for what our founding fathers gave us, then we should do the same for our children and theirs for centuries to come. In all of history, the only form of government that coincides with freedom, that stands and defends freedom, that protects we the people according to the law of the land, is a constitutional conservative republic. It's time to restore our land. One faith, one flag, one language, one country.